Is my wife flirting with her coworker? I am not the oop. Oop is you, Naruto. Is my wife flirting with her coworker? Originally posted to our marriage. Trigger warning. Emotional infidelity. Less than. Original post February 24th, 2023. My wife and I have been together 10 years. Married for nearly 5 and we have a 3-year-old son. We are fairly happy though have been having couples counseling for 6 months as we found being parents very difficult. We've been making a lot of progress with our communication lately, but today that all fell apart. My wife has autistic traits which run in both our families. And I have ADHD, so we are a neurodivergent couple. That's probably relevant here. My wife recently moved back into our shared office as we both work from home. Today she hopped on video call with a guy from work who she is friends with, and I stepped out to take a quick call about something. After my call was finished, I just sat scrolling Reddit for a bit but could hear their conversation. And it increasingly made me uncomfortable. My wife sounded like a completely different person. She would tut and giggle before she said anything. She was constantly joking with him every sentence. She was energetic and it all just sounded so incredibly flirty. He had called her not for anything work-related but to tell her he had taken a new job in the city closest to us. He currently lives far away. She said things like, "Do me a favor. When that job contract comes, just rip it up so you don't have to leave. And, as long as you are always available for me on Microsoft Teams." And they then went on to confirm they had each other on WhatsApp, etc. All the while joking about various things and giggling in a way that I never hear her do. Ever. They were talking for 20 minutes and I almost started to record them so she could hear herself back. But they said goodbye just after I started. It just made me feel so gross listening to it. This isn't the first time I've noticed their flirtiness, and I brought it up last year after she started that new job. They were calling each other outside work hours and she added him on the PlayStation and they would sit and game together in the evenings, chatting away with the same giggly, flirty tone. She was talking about him a lot and telling me lots of really personal things about his childhood and parents and stuff. It caused issues when I brought up that it made me feel uncomfortable. Especially one night when we were supposed to have time together but she just forgot and spent the night playing with him. She denies flirting at all and just says he's a work friend. Around that time she traveled to the central office and I know he had invited her for dinner at his place, which hadn't happened in the end, I think because I said I wasn't comfortable with that. They did end up still going for dinner in the city together though, as friends. The thing is, I'm not a jealous person. Over the years my wife has had a few crushes. One of them being my uni roommate who's like a younger brother to me. It's kind of a running joke that they both fancy each other a bit and I genuinely don't mind and think it's funny. We joke about one day having threesome with him, etc. I do know that she is prone to the occasional crush and I don't take it seriously. But have once or twice over the decade have felt like I have had to point out some boundaries. So back to today. After they finished their call I said, "Hey, can I talk to you a min?" When I then said that she probably wouldn't like what I was about to say, she immediately got defensive and walked off and said she wasn't going to have this conversation. Since I hadn't even said anything yet, that intuitively tells me that some part of her knows that the way she was talking was probably a bit inappropriate. I got upset and said I was feeling uncomfortable with the way she was talking with him again. That it sounds like heavy flirting to me. That I would feel uncomfortable if I talked to another woman at work like that. Or if a girl talked to me like that. Even as a clueless guy, I would be getting a strong vibe that she fancies me. That I feel hurt by it and that if she talked like that to me it would be a dream come true. She basically dismissed it all very defensively and said she wasn't flirting at all. That I just didn't want her to be friends with him. That she doesn't understand what she's done wrong and that she's fed up with me being like this. Even though I haven't spoken to her about this since last summer. And never been jealous in our 10-year relationship. I felt like I'm being gaslit as it seems like such obvious flirting and she's just dismissing it as all in my head. It caused a massive argument. I'm willing to admit that me getting upset about it is likely some insecurity. But at the same time, I feel like I know what I saw, heard, and that I'm an understanding person I'm okay with crushing, but this just crosses a line? I should be able to say that. No? I think it's likely something to do with my wife's autistic traits and not understanding the social norms or boundaries. I don't know. She doesn't realize how flirty she's being sometimes. I think that's definitely true. I wish she would flirt with me by accident a bit more. Is it okay for me to feel upset by this? Or am I being controlling or irrational? TLDR. Is my wife flirting with her coworker and being inappropriate? Am I being weird by feeling upset by it? Update September 29, 2023. Hi, I originally wrote this post earlier in the year. It's well overdue a positive update. I've had a few people asking, so here we go. I ended up showing my wife the post I had written and it was so incredibly validating to feel like I wasn't going insane. We had a really difficult conversation about it all and we were both so angry at each other until she told me the truth. In a rather heated moment she kind of venomously said something like, "I like talking to him because when I do I feel happy and relaxed. Like I can be myself. Which is something I can never feel when I'm around you." This really made me sad and I instantly wasn't angry anymore. I just apologized and told her how that's just what I wanted her to feel around me again. That feeling of being herself is something she had lost after becoming a mom in the difficult few years we've had in COVID, etc. We don't have and never have had any help being parents from our extended families. And so never have time together for ourselves. She didn't have any feelings for him beyond friend, and I do think she was genuinely being naive and also a little willingly ignorant about him pushing boundaries. A few examples which came out after we talked about it: he had asked to come back to her hotel room to continue chatting after the work party. For example, this was also due to her autism as well and not fully understanding where the boundary is. But when we looked at the big picture she could see and did admit that she had unwittingly begun down the path of some kind of emotionally affair, which she didn't really know was a thing. She took responsibility for this and did stop talking to the guy and told him that she would only be talking to him if required to for work purposes from then on. He left that job very shortly after, so that was also easier for us. Funnily enough, it did come out after he left that he had made some advances and been awkward with a few other of my wife's colleagues. People noticed at work that my wife had stopped being friendly with him and was asked, "Was it because he was being awkward with you as well?" Kinda thing. We talked a lot in counseling about it. I think a massive problem that I had to acknowledge was that she had got to a place where she expected me to be angry and irritated by things. Because that is definitely something I have struggled with. So she had begun hiding stuff in fear of how I would respond. She didn't feel like she could talk to me about stuff. When she did admit to her wrongdoing and acknowledge she had begun to push me away and prioritize things above our relationship, she was surprised at how kind and patient and forgiving I was. I was surprised too. We kind of figured out that a lot of the anger and irritation was often because I could tell that I wasn't getting the whole truth. That's all I wanted. Her to be straight with me so I know where I stand. That, and my feelings to be acknowledged. Both of which are a massive trigger for me. We started doing things like having a take back of the day, where if one of us said or did something we later regretted, then we could apologize and call it our take back. And we both agreed that we would forgive and forget those with no exceptions. We found that worked amazingly to develop compassion and understanding for one another. We also began working on having date nights every Friday, and having difficult conversations with 100% honesty while sat together, looking at each other, and holding hands, so that we were connecting and feeling listened to. This was prescribed by our therapist because she told us about how when we both get triggered we have a tendency to disassociate and we don't look at each other and turn away from each other and get stuck in a place where we can't hear what the other is saying. That was really tricky at times, but we've gotten pretty good at it now. And whenever we start struggling, we are very conscious to make physical contact and look at each other so we can hear and be heard. We took a break from counseling over the summer holidays because we decided we needed time to process. And we ended up having an amazing summer. We went back for a therapy session last week, which we thought was about starting a second round. We were a bit nervous because we've been so happy and didn't want to stir anything up. But the therapist could see how happy and good things have been, so she told us not to come back unless we want to in the future. And it's true. We have been the happiest we have ever been. We are really close again. Our communication is so much better. Our understanding and compassion for each other and our quirks, triggers, etc. is at an all-time high. We look out for when the other is struggling and step in where we can. When we miss it and the other has a meltdown or does something unkind, we are much better able to forgive and forget it using our take-backs and just having more understanding and compassion for each other's strengths and weaknesses. I think it's fair to say that although some boundaries were being crossed, my wife was only at the very beginning of the path that leads to full-blown emotional affair. Nothing had really happened, and there were no feelings my wife had beyond exciting friendship with someone who is giving me nice attention, though he definitely had ulterior motives. So we were lucky to catch it when we did. That being said, the root cause was definitely our bad communication, negative behavioral loops that we had gotten into, and the degradation of our romantic relationship from becoming new parents over the last 4 years. There was a lot to learn and a lot of effort and willingness required on our parts to fix the issue and move forward, but only in short, intense convo bursts, outside of which we have been very happy because we feel in control of it. Hopefully some of you can read this and learn a few things to help your relationships. If I had to recommend one thing, it would be the take back of the day. Single quote. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Cheers to everyone who was supportive on the first post. This is a repost sub IAM, not the oop. Oh man, this is so refreshing after my husband secretly left our kids with his sex offender sister behind my back post. Counseling is so helpful for stuff like this. Good for them for working things out. I'm so glad he didn't encourage her to go sleep with the guy and then tell him about it afterwards. Like the post from yesterday. Mature communication? In My Boru post? I truly think that some people feel like being physically sexual with someone is the only way to have an affair. It just doesn't occur to them that although they can have friends of the opposite sex, there is a line that can be crossed. It can be very tricky, especially when the person's friend is in it for the wrong reasons. I can attest, being a parent to a toddler, birthing a child in the middle of 2020, and being in lockdown, really did a number on my relationship with my husband. Not all negative, but everything that was working before got thrown out the window. Suddenly there's no schedule, no routine. Stuck in the house all day together with a 3-year-old and a newborn was an interesting adjustment. We're still figuring out how to undo some of the effects it had on us. It's nice to hear how they resolved. The in-depth explanation from Oop was actually really nice to read. Hopefully his experience and solutions help someone else who read it. One big thing that helped Oop is they both wanted to work on things and find that closeness again. I hope they keep it up. Why is this marked as ongoing? Seems concluded to me. Whoa, what's this? A BORU post that isn't completely horrifying? It couldn't be, but here it is. No. She was hiding things related to the coworker simply because she knew it was wrong. LMAO. Op has rose-tinted glasses on due to them having a child and being together for so long. Very strange that the child they share plays such a small role in this tale. I also find it odd that their therapist basically said they were cured and they don't need to come back. Does this happen? My wife has autistic traits which run in both our families. And I have ADHD, so we are a neurodivergent couple. Yeah, no, that's not how it works. You're not neurodivergent because you have autistic traits. Everyone has autistic traits. Everyone has traits of literally every disorder. That's how being a human works. Having the traits doesn't mean you have the disorder. God, I hate this. I'm gonna be honest, it seems like you're going through it. But I can't tell if it's you or your wife who is excusing a lot of stuff with her autism, that from the sounds of it isn't even diagnosed. I know as well as anybody that it's a spectrum. But as someone with autism diagnosed, I can tell you that while autistic people have harder times picking up on social cues, there are still things that we learn, whether it's through movies, shows, books, or hearing it from others, that wanna come back to my hotel room, or in all shapes and ways a way for someone to invite you for more than a chat. You made it out better and seem to be going strong. But this seems like a thing where you can gaslight yourself into thinking you're the villain for not taking care or being aware enough about her autism. And because you said this, is it okay for me to feel upset by this? Or am I being controlling or irrational? Quote, I feel like it's very important to state for anyone who might read this comment, whether it's nobody, a few people, or a lot, that you're never irrational or controlling. If you have a bad feeling about something, it can definitely be controlling to tell your SO that they can't talk to a certain person. But inherently it's never wrong for you to bring up how it makes you feel when they interact with someone the way they do. What happens from there is what determines if you're controlling or irrational. An understanding SO will ground with you and try to work out a compromise. Or at least talk openly with you about your feelings. Had you bottled up these feelings, she may have ended up actually cheating. Whether or not she says she just saw him as a friend, clearly she was putting a lot of her happy energy in this friendly relationship. And it might only take one misstep for her to end up in that hotel room with him. Your feelings are always valid, and you should always bring them up with your SO. So she had begun hiding stuff in fear of how I would respond. She didn't feel like she could talk to me about stuff. We kind of figured out that a lot of the anger and irritation was often because I could tell that I wasn't getting the whole truth. Hey look, it's me and my mom in this post. She didn't have any feelings for him beyond friend, and I do think she was genuinely being naive and also a little willingly ignorant about him pushing boundaries. A few examples which came out after we talked about it: he had asked to come back to her hotel room to continue chatting after the work party. For example, this was also due to her autism as well and not fully understanding where the boundary is. Wait a minute. I must have misread that based on the comments here. He had asked to come back to her hotel room to continue chatting after the work party. For example, this was also due to her autism as well and not fully understanding where the boundary is. Nope. Didn't misread. Wife gaslit her husband so hard he's making excuses for the dude inviting himself to his wife's hotel room. And this sub is calling this wholesome. The root cause is the imbalance of feelings in their relationship, especially since he full well knows it's not a one-off thing. And when she does it again and pushes the boundary even more, they'll blame it on autism. LMAO. Ah, that is so sweet. All it took was him shedding all self-respect and practically begging her not to tank the relationship for her to decide to not continue looking for companionship outside of her marriage. What a great wife. A great relationship. And a great story. Kevin in sales, Steve from accounting has entered the chat. Man being neurodivergent does seriously suck, eh? I mean, the wife's individual actions here aren't just because she was neurodivergent, obviously. But that definitely played a hand in her mild oblivious nature. Oh wow, I'm autistic with an ADHD boyfriend and a work bestie of the opposite sex. BF's been jealous about coworker, too. But the jealousness kinda solved our problems. Actually. Because of this I could tell him, I actually get that you're jealous and you should. You and me barely talk because you're stonewalling against emotions while him and I are vibing and talk about everything. I'd be really mad if you'd be able to communicate better with someone else. This should be us. But it isn't right now. That totally got through to him, and he then worked on acknowledging his feelings and communicating in a healthy way. Since we now communicate well, he's not jealous anymore and has no reason to. We're both happy and content. Keep an eye on that. Why is everyone saying this is wholesome? The ending only gives me bad feelings.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epicaricast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.